What is up, fellas? The Goob here, with another episode of Rewriting History with the Goob. It's been a bit of a week, so I don't necessarily have the standard content I was intending to bring, but I'm here. I've got a few things to talk about. Been searching for new jobs, so that's been taking up time, and the job market is brutal. So it's been fun, but I wanted to cover a couple more things from the museum last week. My computer was being a little difficult, so I've got some of these opened in Paint. But these are. And I also didn't have time to figure out something else besides Zoom. So this will be a short episode, 40 minutes. If you guys want to call in, please feel free and, do it within the next 40 minutes because that's what you got. This is a crown also found in Peru. This is 3,000 years old. Here is another 3,000-year-old crown from Peru. And there's more than just these two. I just pulled these two examples. I think this one is partial. Like I think the top was broken off there. It is 3,000 years old, granted, right? And, looking at this and then looking at some of these Egyptian crowns, they're quite similar, and that could just be a coincidence, but I thought it was interesting. You have the also Egyptian crown gears, and then you have these Egyptian feather crowns, which were found quite a bit in Egypt, and are quite similar to some of these crowns in Peru. Sorry, again, my computer was being a little difficult, so it wouldn't open the images in image gallery. So something I thought was interesting. I am still waiting to hear back from the museum for more information. They did respond to me, and I emailed them back with specific things, specific questions I had. So we'll see what I get from them. I've also been reaching out to other creators to try and get the news out about NAGPRA, because I think this is a pretty massive piece of news, and it's just gone completely unreported. So hopefully I can get someone like Jimmy Corsetti from Bright Insight. I feel like it would fit very well, especially with the content he's been doing lately. And he's a pretty darn big channel, so I think that would get picked up and shared around. Yeah, if you guys have any recommendations, for people to reach out to, especially if you have their contact info, let me know. So last week I was saying that I was going to talk about the Minoans again a little bit in America and the Solutrean hypothesis. So the Solutrean hypothesis is essentially that ancient Spaniards came to America like 20,000 years ago or even earlier. And this is based off the fact that there's only two parts of the world where these specific fluted points are found. So fluted points or Solutrean points. They have these channels, as you can see down the middle, where that's not found in other arrowheads and spearheads around the world. It's really only found in Spain. These are not the best visual examples, but it's a specific type of forming these stones that just isn't found in other parts of the world. So it's found in pre-Clovis sites in America. Here's a good example. And you can see it's also pretty large here, right? So it's found in these pre-Clovis points, and it's found in Spain in this Solutrean culture. And 20,000 years ago, and even more recently, I think, there's the idea of the ice bridge from China and Russia to the Americas but it's really not talked about the ice bridge from Europe to the Americas, which almost certainly did exist. And I guess the argument from the mainstream is that the bridge from the west coast of the Americas would have been there year round, whereas the bridge from the east coast maybe was more seasonal and only fully connected at parts of the year. Um, that still seems like a pretty easy way to traverse across if you have boats. You're just doing line of sight little jumps rather than sailing across the ocean, even traveling on foot. I don't understand why it wouldn't have been possible for these people. And the other piece of evidence to support the Solutrean hypothesis, other than this one specific set of tools that are found, is DNA evidence. So there are X haplogroups found in the Americas, and the Solutrean hypothesis explains this, suggesting that they came over roughly 20,000 years ago, and that's why you still find these X haplogroups in the northern Native Americans, specifically around the Great Lakes regions, specifically around the areas where all of this copper was being mined. And so I don't know. I do agree with the Solutrean hypothesis in that I think it's absolutely possible people were coming across from the west, or rather from the east going west, either walking across a land bridge or just, leapfrogging these smaller jumps across the island and the ice in the north. But I think that the X haplogroup found in the northern Michigan, in the Northern America regions, might be explained by the Minoans, who also were X haplogroup, which suggests that they kind of controlled the seas, at least for quite a while. And so the idea of them coming back and forth between America, bringing over copper, mining copper in North America, leaving their DNA, in the native North Americans, that we still find today, makes a decent bit of sense to me. And then, this information being lost also makes a good bit of sense. Crete was wiped out pretty cataclysmically. They suspect a volcano wiped out that civilization. But if they controlled the seas to the extent that on their home island, I'm looking for something here, that, they didn't need to build defensive formations, and then who's sailing on ships and parasitized the New World. So, oh, did I get disconnected? Am I still live? If you search on Google for Greek or Roman references, what is going on here? Where the hell? Struggling a bit. Yeah, all right. I seem to still be live. That's good. If you search on Google for like Greek and Roman references of the Americas, you'll find that there's nothing, apparently. In fact, there's tales of the Romans, I believe, setting ships from the west and from the east and trying to meet in the middle, and they either never return or they return having reported never seeing anything and never seeing each other. So the impression is that there's nothing to hint at, travel to the Americas from any of these Greek or Roman writings. But here we have this from Aristotle. And specifically, they found a huge island, lots of plants and animal foods. There flowed great rivers. Well, there's a lot of rivers in America, a lot of great rivers, the best rivers, some would say. And part of what I've been describing with the Americas is that I think it was effectively the Garden of Eden. Whether you want to interpret it as the literal biblical Garden of Eden or just effectively a Garden of Eden, there is this climate shift, I think 700 years ago, that is recognized in the rest of the world. It's recognized in Europe. England used to be like a great wine producer. They were renowned for their wines because it was a lot warmer in England, and then the frost line moved down about 700 years ago. And this wasn't just in the rest of the world. It happened in America too. It's just for some reason not really acknowledged and discussed in America. Um, but there are in the Hopewell culture, I've talked about them before with the Hanukkah mound and a lot of other very interesting things. Their swastikas and their ankhs from Egypt, their copper artifacts and everything else. They have, what the hell was I just saying? Goddamn. Wow. I completely just lost I seem to be lagging pretty bad on this end. Right, sorry. The Hopewell culture have parakeets being depicted in like Ohio, right? That's part of their copper artifacts, which you can no longer find thanks to NAGPRA. You can no longer see these things, but they had parakeets being depicted and things I've talked about like Johnny Appleseed. I think that was there's a lot of early, very, very early reports of America just being covered in fruit trees and nut trees and essentially just being this giant food forest that's also full of animals and all other kinds of food, fish and everything else. So it was especially, 700 plus years ago before this frost line came down, America was the type of place where you didn't really need shelters. Why weren't the Native Americans building these grand structures? Why weren't they building shelters? Everything were just these little teepees. It was because the weather was even nicer and better than it is, today. There was an abundance of food everywhere, perfect weather, tropical birds, parakeets flying around, right? This was a paradise. And that's, sort of what they're describing here. And then in this other screenshot, which is, I'll read through. So Diodorus of Sicily in Libya, at a distance of many days swimming in the ocean, is an island of large size. The land there is fertile, mountainous, and there are many beautiful views of the plains. According to him, flowing navigable rivers, in ancient times the island remained undiscovered since been removed from the rest of the inhabited world and has been found only at a later time for a reason. Since ancient times, the Phoenicians traveled a lot in order to trade, established colonies in Libya and in the western part of Europe, surveyed areas beyond the Pillars of Hercules. They were relegated to the ocean's wind. Man, I am struggling to read. They were relegated to the ocean winds far. After much wandering, they washed up on the shore of the island. Diodorus tells a very important fact. Tyrians, experienced sailors, set out to establish a colony, but the Carthaginians ahead of them in this. So we were just talking about the Carthaginians in the last one, right? This country, according to Diodorus, looked like this. There are wooden huts built with love, with gardens, where there are fruit trees of all sorts, the rolling hills covered with dense forests. Local tribes spend a lot of time on the hunt. They also have a fish because the coast of their homeland is washed by the ocean. Some experts believe that the Great Island was the Atlantic coast of the North America, but the other called this land Brazil. Either way, that is the Americas, right? So those are just two little sources, but yeah, I think that all of these groups were coming over here. I think the Minoans were amongst the first, it would seem, and I think they did have quite possibly a lot to do with that copper culture around the northern lakes. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? And going back 20,000 years ago, again, totally possible that these groups came over here, but something. I mean, obviously the Younger Dryas event happened, right? So the likelihood of those groups surviving still and you seeing their genetics it's entirely possible, but I think a more likely culprit is the Minoans for those X haplogroups around the northern lakes. And, an interesting, I look to all sources for information, right? And that includes like the Wee Wuzzers, some of the black people claiming everything. But they do make some interesting points about the Americas. There do seem to have been black people here long before the slave trade. And I don't know exactly where they came from, but they seem to have been settled in the exact same areas where you find black people in America today, like this southeastern portion of the United States. There are several references to them, including from Columbus's voyage and other early voyages. But then there's also these black Native American tribes that used to exist, and I don't recall their names, but again, in the southeastern portions of the United States, there seems to have been a black population here long before any were brought here through the slave trade. It seems like a lot of groups were over here before. Yeah, my computer seems to be lagging quite badly. I am not connected to my 5G, so that's not helping. But I think if I switch it over, it might disconnect the stream. So if anyone wants to call in, please feel free. I have a feeling that the next couple of weeks, quite possibly, are going to be more viewer-driven episodes, right? Because trying to find a job, and again, job market is brutal. So, I don't know how much time I'll have to dedicate to the show. It's difficult, as I've said many times on this show, to just sit down and talk about a subject for an hour. That does require preparation. I have to know, what I'm going to be talking about, and then work through a flow that's going to try and make sense. So might not have time to do that, but I have a large repertoire of knowledge. I've been looking into this for a decade now. So if you guys, there's something that interests you, something you want to talk about, maybe you have an idea or a theory or just something you want to ask questions about, feel free to call in, and I should be able to, engage and talk about, I would imagine, most of the things you guys might bring up. So, going to be relying on you guys a little bit, most likely, until I get my work situation figured out. Want to manage you? You seem like a pretty unmanageable person. I don't know, Mr. Eric. That's, I'm looking for a full-time job, but that sounds like a full-time job. Yeah. So some more about Peru, I guess, in the gears, just kind of reiterating some of the points I made last week, that I find it very difficult to believe, especially when you look at the impressiveness of this metallurgy here. This one isn't even the best example. There's, where's the one with all the rings on it? Up here, I believe, this one. So, I mean, that is some really impressive, that's some impressive stuff there. All those interlocking rings. I don't see seams on the rings. I don't know exactly what technique they use to accomplish this, but this is some high quality workmanship here. They have stuff like this. They have all of their incredible megaliths on tops of mountains, and then they have, again, the exact components you would need for, at the very least, wheels. But I imagine someone would be capable of coming up with pulleys, wheels, using these gears as gears, over the thousands of years that this civilization existed. it's just difficult for me to accept that they couldn't have. And then if you listen to Brian Forrester, he talks about the elongated skulls. He also talks about I don't think it's X haplogroup. It's a different one, but from the Caucasus Mountains, right? He finds red-haired mummies in Peru. So even if you agree with the mainstream archaeologists and you go, the natives are too simplistic to come up with any of this technology, despite these obvious accomplishments that would indicate they're perfectly capable of accomplishing these types of technology. You got some white people over there too that could have done it, right? So, and while my position generally on large rocks and how they were moved is that it's not a problem, there's a lot that can be done with simple mechanics and leverage. Obviously, a lot more if you've got things like pulleys and gears, but even without those, Wally Wallington, such a good example. And that's just a handful of techniques. Like there's a limitless number of options to be employed using simple mechanics and leverage. So how these people moved these stones in the ancient past, I don't know exactly how they did it, but I'm not really all that concerned about it. But when you're looking at Peru, it becomes a much larger mystery because we're talking about, Machu Picchu, an elevation of like 7,000 feet. There's other locations that are double that, right? 13 and 14,000 feet elevation. And you have 10 ton, 20 ton, 30 ton megaliths on the tops of these mountains, some much larger, but on that, like on the 13, 14,000 feet, you've got plenty of 10 ton megaliths. And these stones are often coming from many miles away and across many other mountains. So, moving a stone across relatively flat ground, lifting it to a reasonable elevation, I don't see as that mysterious. But in Peru, how are you hauling these things up mountains? And pulleys and gears certainly would help explain that. So, and there's China is repurposing a lot of their really old ships, the old wood. I mean, they're not ships anymore, but the wood that's remaining from these very old ships into like furniture, because it's high quality wood. So just the idea of repurposing, the fact that we don't find these old gears and pulley systems and things like that really is not so mysterious to me. The degradation of civilizations in general is a pattern that you see. The most impressive things are often the oldest. So someone somewhere was doing these very impressive things, and those tools over time likely got cannibalized, turned into more simplistic things, and eventually disappear, right? Yeah, have something that helps you haul things up a mountain. You're going to use it, until it is no longer usable, most likely. It's not like a decorative piece that you're going to set on a shelf and preserve, right? Things still don't really add up. There's so many similarities seen across the world. The nubs, the Cyclopean architecture, where the rocks are fit perfectly together and in completely irregular patterns. The scoop marks, extreme polishing, the eye clamps, right? They're called T clamps, I think, but they're capital I clamps found in a lot of these structures. Just so many features shared across all of these megalithic sites all around the world, and supposedly no shared culture. There's something big being missed, obviously. I don't know what it is, but Yeah, fellas, if no one wants to call in, I think I'm going to wrap it up. This still says 40 minutes up here. So I guess there's time to call in if you want it. But otherwise, yeah, I'll catch you fellas next week. I didn't go to the Mormon church this week. I have like a mental block. I feel weird going to a church for some reason. I don't know where I fall religiously. Like as a child, I truly believed in God, like truly, truly. Not just like, oh yeah, there's a God. Like no, I thought there was an all-knowing dude watching me all the time, kind of deal, and truly believed that. Then became an atheist, and then I studied history and was like, no, there's something to all these gods, but there's something to all of these gods, right? So that puts me in a weird spot, and I don't know where I fall, and makes me feel weird thinking about going to a church. But yeah, I probably should. I think I can also just like call up their bishop and see if anyone would be willing to talk to me. That might be easier. But yeah. Yeah, that's all I got, fellas. I'll catch you next week. Come prepared with some. There's got to be stuff you guys are curious about. There's got to be stuff you guys are interested in, and I'm prepared to have a conversation. I feel pretty confident in my repertoire of knowledge locked away. I disappeared in my chat. I'm unmuted, so you should be able to hear me. Let's ask you to unmute. And then see if I can get the chat back. You gotta unmute yourself, Mr. Okay, so yeah, you're unmuted. Try talking. There you are.
You there?
What's up, man?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. Getting there slowly but surely, but we're on camera face. Fuck off, cat.
That's good,
Yeah.
man.
You behaving?
What's that?
Have you been behaving?
The cat's misbehaving?
Yeah, the cat was in my face there.
I gotcha. So what's up, man?
Yeah, no, I was wondering where we're at. You're talking about the Astra? American Native Indians not getting close to their... well, if you're not Native American, you're not allowed close to the... Here, that cat's coming near me again.
What's his name? Rube Star. You're like Rube Star with his cats. They're trying to kill him. Trying to kill you. But yeah,
The cat is trying to kill me. Fuck.
You're talking about the black Native Americans, or you're talking about NAGPRA? What?
All of them. Go for it.
I'm not sure what you're trying to say.
Yeah, like NASPRA, like what are you trying to say about NASPRA not allowing people to observe Native American traditions and stuff like that?
Yeah, so...
Sorry, you off this episode and stuff like that, put you onto you can fuck off. Like, just fuck off, please.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm talking about you.
NAGPRA's a federal law that has made any significant Native American history illegal. So you can still see like images of their teepees. You can still see images of arrowheads and things like that. But any artifact that is even potentially related to a ceremonial purpose, a burial, something that might have been passed down as an heirloom, or again, anything that's even potentially related to these things is now completely illegal in any and all forms for the public to know about. So you're not allowed to see images of them. You're not allowed to have books, like written descriptions of them in research papers or books. Online, the images have been pulled down. So that Museo Larco museum in Peru, so awesome. It's got thousands of artifacts that you can view online and in person, but none of that is viewable in the United States of America anymore for Native Americans within the United States of America. There's news articles that were written around January 12th, because that's when this law went into place, was January 12th of this year, of museums having to throw tarps over their Native American displays because they were now illegal to display to the public. So all of these museums and all of these universities have had to pull down, all of their image galleries online, have had to put their research papers, which were already behind walls, but, now they're even less accessible to the public. And somehow this has gone completely under everyone's radar. Like, no one, you can search on YouTube for someone talking about this, and I'm the only one. So yeah, I'm trying to find someone else who's bigger than me that I can help get this word out, like Jimmy Corsetti at Bright Insight. But it's pretty crazy. Okay. Like, the entire history of a country has been made illegal, which is wild.
It's non-verboten. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Can you please just back up? Yeah. Sorry, cat. Yeah, no, that is really the interesting aspect of it, and that's like the American history has been written off as the overture of the white fucking colonization and stuff.
Well, that's literally all you're allowed to know about anymore. So because anything that's Native American has been made illegal, you're only allowed to know the colonizing aspect of it now. Like, that's the only part of the history that's legally allowed of America.
Really?
I mean, yes. So not from a perspective of like critical race theory or anything. I'm just saying that you're not allowed to talk about the native aspect anymore. So the only part that's left is the white colonizer part, right?
That's it. That's the whole narrative subjectification. Like you're pushing more off the white narrative because you can't look at the alternative narratives and stuff like that and say like, oh, well, they used to manage the forest here and stuff like that. Why we're not still managing the forest like they used to do?
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite crazy.
This is going on here and stuff like that. It could be like if we had a simple narrative conversation with Native Americans and how they managed forests back in the day and stuff like that to how we manage forests in the modern day and stuff like that. I'm sorry, I come from a different narrative to what you are experiencing right now. And,
yeah.
Although I do feel I fucking hate trees. Like, I really fucking hate trees. Like, fucking trees are the most pointless fucking endeavor that we've ever tried to encourage. Like, why the fuck are we encouraging fucking massive growth that could destroy our houses or kill us at any moment?
Some of them grow fruit. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Some of them do grow true and tall, and they can be over fucking 150 meters, and that's really interesting and stuff like that. But still, fuck trees. Yeah, no, all good. Thank you for that.
Yeah, of course, man. Thank you for calling in.
I'm gonna stop at that. Peace.
Later, man. Yeah, Mr. Perry. So it was, right? That was what NAGPRA originally was. So before January 12th of this year, that's what it was. And I think there might have been, along with that, a small degree of covering up of artifacts. Like, if there's things directly on the body, probably we're less likely to, ever see those types of things because they're so directly associated with the bodies, which you're definitely not allowed to see from the original NAGPRA laws. But now it's just everything. It's extremely broad to cover any artifact of any significance. So again, arrowheads are perfectly acceptable. You can still see things that are totally inconsequential and meaningless, but galleries like the Museo Larco gallery, where you're actually seeing their art and their cultural artifacts and the impressive things they've made, that's all gone now. Oh, was that Was that not you, Mr. Watson? Or I guess it was Mr. Watson, but it wasn't Eric. But yeah, the Zoom meeting's pretty much up, and thank you for the call, but I'm out of material to cover, so I will catch you fellas next week. And yeah, if you have any other recommendations, I've reached out to Jimmy at Bright Insight, and I've reached out to Nerdrotic. They like to cover. I think this would be something they'd be interested in covering. I don't think they'd be as perfect as a fit as Jimmy, but I think it would be all right. And I'm not sure who else to go through. So if you guys have any recommendations, put them in the comments or drop them in the Discord. Let me know. I'll reach out to them and hopefully get this news out to the world. This massive, insane news. All right. Later, fellas.